this season on The Paddock. We enter our second season of professional touring car racing. It's still about the cars. It's still about the company. But really, it's about the people.
I hope that makes it in. His face.
With so much left to do, the FC Puro crew scrambles to get the cars ready for the first race of the 2019 season.
And I got our actual engineer in Colorado, and then we got TIV in New Jersey. We got to bring the cars to TIV, and it's literally like all of these moving pieces are just all around here, and then in a week it's just gonna go. Whew. Yeah, stress level.
Keep going. What else you got? What else?
Anyone who watched the races last year knows that we were competitive, but we were not as competitive as maybe we should have been. From the outside looking in, we are basically getting our asses handed to us by factory teams.
Hyundai goes 1-2 at Portland International.
And from the inside looking out, we are a team that is doing absolutely everything in our power to be the fastest team out there. However, there are things outside of our control that are making us not perform at the highest level.
We found that no matter what was done with the BOPs, the DSG could not compete with the
Does he have
sprint
anything
cars.
here for Jeremy Daniel to move into that fourth position, still sitting in sixth, wants to get into the top five?
And it sounds like we're blaming, pointing a finger at something, and it's really kind of shitty to do that, but truly in this scenario, it was something that we couldn't control.
I knew that we could have the performance that we wanted. We could be running up front with sequential gearboxes. We were close enough to the front that all we needed was that little bit of an advantage.
I didn't want to be even in the conversations where Nate and Michael had to pitch to the company, hey, can we have 80 grand, 90 grand to just buy sequential transmissions?
I'm not quite sure how I convinced the company.
You know, I do ultimately trust Nate and Michael's decision, but at their core, they are hardcore automotive enthusiasts. They're race car drivers. There's a lot of emotion that goes along with the things that they do.
I had to sort of say, you need to trust me to spend, $90,000 on this upgrade for these two cars.
So I've got to make sure that they are separating the emotion from the logic. When the emotion kicks in, you can make really irrational decisions.
From a company perspective, we have a business to run.
I had concerns that it may just be drivers, not the actual equipment.
And yeah, I had some reservations about it too. Like I was hoping that we would see the performance.
We looked at how much capital we were going to bring into the balance sheet, and we made a decision to purchase the sequential gearboxes, and we already made other decisions to invest in other parts of the business, and thankfully everything kind of came together.
Yeah, so the ordering process, you order the parts you need. The government shut down, we couldn't get them through customs. Then the next step is you send about 15 to 20 emails and probably about 10 to 15 phone calls finding out where the parts are that you're waiting for. When they finally come, they come in a truck and you get this nice little crate that says Volkswagen Audi Motorsports on it, and you get really, really excited and you open it up. You pull all the parts out and you put them on a table and you realize that, out of the 60 or 70 parts you just ordered, 4 or 5 of them are missing. It was just a slew of issues that pushed every timeline, every date that we had back further and further and further. And basically to the point where the race was here, all the timelines were starting to get pushed back, and it was working 90 to 100 hours a week by almost everyone involved to make sure we got what we needed to get complete and ready before we left for COTA. I like Austin because it feels like home a little bit. It's not perfect, and I like that. It's a little weird. It's a cool city. There's definitely a lot of cool people there and a lot of cool things to do and see. you know, they have this sort of gem there now with COTA being there. You know, this world-class Formula One circuit, you know, literally 5 minutes from the airport, 10-15 minutes from the city center. As far as the track goes, I like COTA because it's bumpy, it's fast and flowing in a kind of weird way. It has some really hard brake zones. So yeah, it makes for good racing. I think that's the best part.
Most professional racing teams provide themselves with a very long runway of testing, of changing things and track time and see how it affects lap times and see what the drivers feel like. We had none of that going into 2019. Zero.
Yeah, it wasn't smooth sailing. It wasn't plug and play.
The first day back at the track is Thursday, and it's practice, and it's practice for a reason because it's kind of like going back to school.
So yeah, just like your first day of school, you walk in the doors, you look around, you scope out the situation, like who's that guy, who's this person, what is this team? We haven't been in these cars for now 4 or 5 months. So you sort of have to get yourself back in that rhythm, get yourself up to speed. I remember very specifically the first couple laps, you know, just feeling out the car and just trying to get used to the gearbox, but realizing like it was 40 degrees, it was raining sideways, really couldn't get any temperature into the tires, and it was tricky. I think both Michael and I spun at least once, both of us.
This is kind of what happens when you rush, and we don't rush because like we were sitting around doing nothing. We did everything as soon as we possibly could, but there was an alternator pulley that comes with the kit that's welded. This one has a clutch on it, so it allows it to spin, but because the sequential is so violent, it actually just spun it all the way around, and basically the pulley was separate from the alternator. And so we wasted a whole session, went out and did 2 laps and it failed and came in, and that was the end of that session. So those are things that you normally figure out in testing. I mean, for us, Thursday was a test day. It just happened to be the first race weekend as well.
Friday, we're still trying some more testing, or more changes in the car, testing things, different damper setups, different spring setups. And then about the 3rd lap in on the 2nd session on Friday, I was coming into one of the hairpins. One of the downshifts was extremely hard, and I thought maybe it just didn't mesh up right or something happened. But then as soon as I got on the power coming out of the corner, the car made this nasty whining noise.
You just started howling when I got on the power.
So I radioed in, limped the car into the pits. We checked it out, couldn't find anything in the pits, so they sent me back out. And then as soon as I went back on the track, the clunk came back again and my dash went blank. So at that point we parked the car, towed it back to the trailer to realize that the 4 bolts that hold the transmission to the mount itself had all sheared off, and that the engine had rocked itself forward and ripped the engine mount on the passenger side basically right off the frame rail of the car. And then on top of that, the reason the dash went out is the shift actuator that actually lives right on top of the gearbox had moved and had impacted the frame of the car and had ripped the plug right out and grounded things out, and we didn't even know if the thing was going to be functional ever.
So Friday night was kind of when a group of people actually become a team. And by that I mean it was very easy for the FCP Euro Motorsports crew to just pack up and leave and let the HRD crew deal with the car. That is ultimately their responsibility to work on, fix, prepare the cars. However, that would be a really shitty thing for us to do because we are quite literally all on the same team.
The crew jumped right in, all hands on deck. So we had Tiv and Cody in the trailer, basically with an actuator completely apart. And on the outside of the trailer, we had Phil and Jason and basically everyone working on the car, pulling engine mounts off. We were welding engine mounts. We were borrowing parts from other teams, just basically anything we could do to get this car back together for qualifying first thing in the morning the next day. So Saturday morning was a very mixed weather morning, which is about the worst it gets for qualifying. So we were in the trailer flipping a coin, almost going back and forth between, do we go out on rains, do we go out on slicks, do we go out on rains, do we go out on slicks. So we ended up going with rains.
I don't know if anyone has seen the movie A Perfect Storm, but what happened with Nate on Saturday is kind of like that.
As soon as we were able to get our hands on the cars, we realized that the engine mount on my car and the transmission mount had both bent and sort of tweaked again. So there was going to be an issue, and these engine mounts weren't going to last the race unless we did something to fix it. So at that point, it basically was all hands on deck, get the car in there, get the engine lifted up, pull the mounts off, weld them, reinforce them, do whatever you needed to do to make the car last the 40-minute race that was going to be coming up in just about an hour and a half. You know, there was moments that it was pretty hairy. That we found cracks on the transmission mount as we were pulling the engine mount out. So the engine mount got pulled out. Some just basic steel was welded to the side of it just to reinforce it in a couple spots. During the same time, we realized that the transmission mount had cracked, and so they were checking the transmission mount and trying to re-weld that at the same time. All of this happening, you know, basically with the engine sitting there on a jack, wiggling, you know, the car's not being prepped the way it should be for a race. You know, literally everything was focusing on just making the car finish the race. Normally at this time, you like to basically park the car, wipe it down, make sure everything's all right, maybe throw it on the alignment pad to make sure everything's perfect for the race. This wasn't crossing your T's and dotting your I's. This was trying to get it to do what it needs to do.
You know, we were getting metal stock and welding stuff back together and literally doing whatever possible to get the car out for the race.
They finished it up, they closed the hood, they dropped me down off air jacks, and literally it was like a pit stop. As soon as I hit the ground, we accelerated and we just went down to pre-grid. As I'm transiting down to pre-grid, I start getting a warning on the dash, basically saying, you know, blinking at me saying that we had low fuel pressure.
Check Nate. Loud and clear. I have a low fuel pressure warning light.
And at this point, all of the pomp and circumstance is happening for pre-race. And no one knows the entire few hours before this were insane.
And as I pull into the pre-grid, Gareth Foley, our BMW catalog manager, who's also one of the tech guys on the team, comes sprinting from behind the pit wall over to me, opens up the back door. I hear, you know, fiddling around with something, plug something in, and all of a sudden my fuel pressure goes up to about 4.5 bar, and the alarm goes away, and everything was fine at that point.
It's all set. It was left unclogged, but it's all set. Hey man, great save. Great save.
So we got it together. I'm sitting P1 with my teammate in P2 on the grid, first race of 2019, and about halfway around the track, warming up my tires, my dashboard goes blank again. The exact same thing it did when we had the engine mount failure the day previously. Cody, our engineer, is asking me to cycle the ignition, so I go into the back straight. I build up as much speed as I can behind the pace car, and I start cycling the ignition off, turn the car completely off, turn it back on, start it, accelerate, still not working, trying to get the dash to function. The dash never came back on, but what did happen is the car basically went into inlet mode and wouldn't accelerate at that point. You know, I had to pull over to the side, and the entire field went around me, including the entire TCR field and the TCA field, so I think it was about 30-something cars went around me. So I continued to cycle the ignition frantically. And at some point, basically realized that the car came back and I had power again, and I was able to accelerate somewhere around the carousel. The entire field was about a quarter of a lap ahead of me at that point, so I made a frantic dash to try to catch up to them.
Yeah, I wonder if he just came to a complete stop, reset the electronics, and now he's got life back in the car.
Whoa. That was sweet. He's going to have some warm tires, too.
At this point, I'm expecting Nate, now that he's got power, to just hustle through the front of the field, but for whatever reason, we couldn't go to the front now.
I reviewed some of the rules with my team, which is basically I couldn't pass anyone until I crossed where the start-stop line was. So realizing that, I sort of backed off the field a little bit and just tried to time my start the best I could. I feel I did a pretty good job of that and was able to get around probably about a third of the TCA field in the first corner. Then we had a couple local cautions, so I couldn't really pass many cars. I sort of had to duck in line. And then by about 3/4 of the first lap, I caught up to the back of the TCR field. I was pretty angry. I think it's safe to say I just wanted to get through the field as fast as I could. And basically, the remainder of the race, I just put my head down and just charged as hard as I could, and I was able to catch up to back to my teammate in second place.
So I was in first place. It was pretty cool. Yeah, you guys are all worrying about Nate's stupid car, him pressing the freaking pit lane button down the back straight and dropping to the back, instead of, hey, there's an actual car, FCP Euro car in first place. Oh, that's an interesting story.
We had a pretty good photo finish crossing the line second and third, which felt really good, and to reclaim that last spot on the podium. It wasn't the spot I'd hoped to be standing on, but I was able to get significant points and really give our team the best case scenario considering what we had gone through.
Michael had an incredible drive to bring home P2. Nate, made his way through the field and got P3. And standing on the podium, watching these guys fiddle with the champagne, and Michael literally sprayed himself in the face. Like, we clearly had not done this before. So it was a really good feeling to take that home, and we were just now at this point, we had to do it again the next day.
Sunday's race is determined by Saturday's race lap times. So in that charge from 4th to 3rd on the Saturday, I had set my fastest lap of the race, which was the second fastest lap of the race, I think maybe a 10th behind Mason's. So that basically said that Mason was going to start P1, I was going to be P2, and I believe it was the Alpha in P3 and Michael in P4.
Are racing, and boy, Filippi getting a big jump.
Big jump, and just like yesterday, Walker gets a really good start as well, down to the inside. Yesterday was... This FCP Euro team take the charge and the challenge to the front on that Hyundai. Chance they've had to run since they made the switch to the sequential gearbox configuration on these FCP Euro machines, running in the second and third position, and said it's really just transformed them.
We're a big advocate for having more cars and more sequential cars. We'd love for the Hyundais and the Hondas to come back. It's like when we win, we want to win against everybody. We want to win against the best, and so the more cars that they can pump into the series, the better.
COTA, this is a Formula One circuit. Some of the most famous racing names in the world right now have stood on those podiums. And to be able to stand on that podium and walk the little podium stairs up to the podium and just all of that that's really awesome.
Next time on The Paddock. The team heads to sunny Florida to compete at our first street course, the streets of St. Petersburg. With tight corners, no room for error, and 300,000 IndyCar fans, the pressure is on to perform.
Proper touring car racing on a city circuit.
Out of the running, it turned out that our biggest competition was ourselves.
We have bumpers for reasons. Makes it more fun.